You are now listening to the Add 10 Gallons Concrete Podcast.
Wait, the answer was add 10 gallons?
Add 10 gallons.
My first thought was we got to put Acti-Gel in there.
Yeah, great.
Truck's on the way.
On the way.
Yeah, okay. I've got two observations, neither of which are really educated or well thought out. Which are like most of my observations are.
There aren't a lot of problems on a job site that can't be solved with a sack full of biscuits.
Today's episode of the Add 10 Gallons Concrete Podcast is brought to you by Acti-Gel 208. Acti-Gel 208 is a high-performance additive for the concrete industry that is greatly beneficial to the producer. It enables them to increase the percentage of manufactured sand by up to 100% and completely replace all the natural sand in the mix. In areas where natural sand is scarce, inconsistent, and expensive, this provides a huge benefit to any ready-mix company out there. Benefits of manufactured sand and concrete include consistent air content, improved compaction, and increased density. Now in the past, the downside of using manufactured sands was that they were hard to pump, hard to place, and hard to finish. Well, Acti-Gel 208 solves all those issues. By improving suspension, stability, and the quality of the cement paste in the mix, Acti-Gel overcomes the old issues with manufactured sand and leaves them behind. Let Acti-Gel 208 improve the quality of your mix while saving money on every yard you produce. For more information, visit us at actigel.com. That's ACTI-GEL.com.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another installment of the Add 10 Gallons Concrete Podcast. We appreciate you being with us. With me, as always, I have Joey Bell and Paul Finley. Since I announced Joey first, Paul, what's going on?
Yeah, lately, for whatever reason, you've been going to Joey first. And, as we're going to talk with Belkowitz about, it's obviously because Joey's the favorite.
Yeah, we will get into that. We will get into the fact that Joey Bell is Active Minerals' favorite son. Joey, speaking of, what's up, man?
Life can't get any better, apparently.
The heir apparent. If this was the royal family right now, Joey would be Prince Joey, next in line.
Yeah, Prince Joey the Third. How's that sound, brother?
No, I believe in democracy.
As the perfect answer.
That was a great edit. For anyone listening to this, I believe in democracy.
Awesome. Well, it's been a minute since we've been on here and had some content to bring to the people. We've been busy, obviously, as we hope you all have been busy as well. I mean, you got to make hay when the sun shines, as they say, and in the middle of summertime, you're pouring concrete as fast as you possibly can. So we've been out helping people do so. But in the meantime, since we've been here last, what's new? What's new with you guys?
Joey actually has a story that lends to private industry stepping up. Joey, why don't you tell the people?
Yeah, there's a company out of Albany, New York called Harrison and Burroughs. They actually build, maintain, and repair bridges around New York. Their owner and COO, who has an epic mustache, by the way, if you look up Fox News, I think is where I saw it.
They're starting to make a comeback. You're seeing more and more of the lip stash.
I shaved down to a mustache for my daughter's first birthday, and that was the closest I've become to getting divorced. But these guys are paying up to $47 an hour to high school graduates. They give upcoming senior year students an opportunity to work up to 200 hours to complete a summer apprenticeship. So between your junior and senior year, you can work over the summer for these guys. And the next year after you graduate, you can start making close to six figures right out of high school.
Yeah, for the people driving that can't pull out their calculator, that's $97,000 a year salary. That's assuming that they're not getting paid overtime. And typically, guys at that level,
Yeah, they're getting overtime.
have
Yeah.
have an opportunity for time and a half. So you got to imagine they're making six figures coming out. So how long was that apprenticeship? You said 200 hours?
200 hours. So what's that, 5 weeks?
5 weeks? That's it?
5 weeks at 40 hours a week. So 200 hours in the construction industry is probably a few weeks.
Yeah, we trimmed that down to like 3 weeks. So you come out of high school and you're willing to get after it, do essentially a summer intern program, and go into the fall making $100K.
19 years old.
Dude, that's incredible.
I think you mentioned the pension too. So that's almost unheard of as well. these days.
Yeah, those are things.
My
that
wife
pass.
has a pension through the VA since she's a nurse, but she's the only person under 40 that I know that has a pension.
Yeah, about the government teaching, it's about the only place you see those things. The question with pensions always is who's funding it? So is the teacher funding the pension, or is like their money coming from somewhere else that's funding it? And so when you have public pensions, I get real nervous because what that usually means is they're taking money out of your paycheck and they're going to manage your retirement for you. And we've seen teachers' pensions and other government-run pensions go insolvent. So that scares me to death. But if it's a situation where it's like a private company who is funding it on your behalf, like I'm going to put in 3%, 6% on your behalf, that's a little bit different. That's nice.
I just thought it was cool since we've talked about before all the opportunities that kids have right out of high school. And this one just popped up in national news, and the guy was putting the word out. And I'm assuming that this opportunity isn't limited to New Yorkers or residents of New York State. I mean, anybody could travel up there, probably do an interview and relocate and get a job up there.
Yeah, if you're willing to relocate to New York, you know the saying, "You couldn't pay me to live in New York." Well, maybe you can. Like, you look for the 19-year-old in a Ford F-350 lifted dually with 28-inch wheels, smokestacks coming out of the bed. Yep, that's that kid working in the concrete industry, making $100,000 a year. He's got nothing better to
Upstate
spend
New
his
York
money
is
on.
nice, though.
Man, that's awesome. I hope it works out. There's another industry right now that's paying people really well, and it's concrete adjacent. We work in it a lot, the mining industry. So, we consider mining in the construction world is usually like mining of aggregates. But I want to skip over to their cousin there. It's like the mining of like gold and copper. Well, we know here that there is a big push to get into electric vehicles, and the supply chain behind that is really reliant on foreign production of these base minerals and metals. And so here in the United States, there's a push to actually open up some of these mines. So there's private companies that are like, yeah, we're ready to rock and roll. One of them is an incredible lithium deposit in Nevada. And I was just in Nevada at a mining conference. They were super excited about how this initiative, so it's called Thacker Pass. And so Thacker Pass is like right at the finish line, about to get the stamp of approval. Boom. We're going to be mining lithium here. There's companies that are going to be making lithium hydroxide so it can be used in batteries. And all that's going to happen here in the United States, in the great state of Nevada. Not so fast, my friend. There is a U.S. environmental group who has come and petitioned the U.S. government. Yes, the environment group Western Watersheds Project has petitioned the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to protect a spring snail. Yes, a snail. The rare Kings River spring snail that is only found in northwestern Nevada.
The f*** out of here.
Yes, so they're going to deny the lithium mine so that we don't endanger this snail that nobody's ever heard of.
Well, I hope they can speak Chinese, because if they live another 10, 15, 20 years and we're absolutely producing nothing and they're producing everything that we rely on, you better be able to speak Mandarin.
Is the land that mine's going to be on, is that federally owned land?
I don't think it matters, even if it's not. The U.S. government still has to approve all mining declarations and all permits to open new mines, and so it can be shut down for any number of reasons. There was another mine, actually, it's opening up. It's another lithium project, and I was talking to the company at the show, and the lady was so excited because they think they're going to start building at the end of the year. I mean, literally building on bare ground. This is a greenfields project, right? So they got to pour a ton of concrete to build the actual plant. We're going to do all this stuff it's another lithium project. And they got held up by one of these ecologists. Somebody had gone out, because what they do when they're like, oh, I want to build on this land. So all kind of agencies and representatives from the state and federal governments. They come out and they survey the land. One of the things they're looking for is wildlife, and are you going to disrupt the ecosystem? And if so, how much? And what can we live with? Well, for this other lithium project, they found an incredibly rare, it may have even been unknown before, form of buckwheat. And they weren't going to let the lithium mine go forward because they didn't want them to destroy the previously unknown buckwheat. So, so the listeners can't see Josh's face right now, but it's glorious. So, so what the mine did was they said, all right, they hired a botanist, like brought this buckwheat expert from
Please continue. I'm sorry.
no, dude, brought this lady from South America and brought her up to Nevada and let her build like this beautiful greenhouse that is now growing this endangered buckwheat. So now it has a protected space inside of a greenhouse so the lithium project could go forward. So we need to find like a terrarium for the snails, is what I'm saying. That way we can get more of this lithium out of the ground.
My God.
I actually see this all the time in the conservation realm. Oh, sorry, hold for dogs.
Yeah, I was actually hoping Joey would come in with like a little bit of the other side of the argument. Even if he's a little bit on our side, that he'll at least like give us the point of view from the other side and make like a intelligent argument for us.
Yeah, I see this all the time in the conservation realm, especially when it comes to like public hunting lands that are either getting sold or, in this case, there's a mine or something going to be put on there. Conservation groups and everything else will do almost anything to get a leg up. And that sounds like what's happened in this case. Even on a local level here in Tennessee, there's a WMA down around Columbia, and they were going to, I'm trying to think of how many acres it was that they were going to halt the hunting on this land, and they were going to turn it into a city park. And we fought that tooth and nail. And I think it was something similar. I forget what it was, but they found something rare within that WMA. And in all honesty, you could probably find something like that in any parcel of land in the country. So whether it be buckwheat or a snail or some bird or grass or just anything, people will use that for a leg up against, the development and mines and everything else. And we actually got that overturned. So we got to keep our hunting land instead of having it turned into a city park. And I know it doesn't really mean much to a lot of people, but to guys like us that recreate on those lands, we consider that our property. We can go on there for free and do whatever we want with it. And when something like that comes along, development or a mine, we lose that access. And yeah, I'm all for, mining of materials and everything else, so long as it's sustainable and it's not in a place where I'm going to go hunting one day.
So I wonder if this land is being used for anything else. Because what Joey just described is he didn't care about this rare snail that they found on this public hunting land. He wanted to hunt on this land, and they were going to use whatever tool they had in the tool belt to try and convince, this whoever was bargaining this to say, you can't sell this land because of XYZ. So I wonder if something else is going on at this lithium mine where they're like, no, we want to go hiking on these trails, and that's not a good enough reason to stop the development of lithium. So they're like, oh, we're going to find this rare buckwheat, and now you can't take our hiking trails or something like that.
Yeah, that's originally why I asked if it was federally owned or state owned, if it was private. And if it's private, then most people probably aren't really going to care. Like if you have 10,000 acres of private land and you decide to put a mine on it, that's up to you. I mean, that's your land. But when you go to put something like that on a national forest or something like that, that's when a lot of people have problems with it.
Yeah, Joe, you're right. So the mine is like 9 square miles of public land. It'd be an open pit, and it's going to be actually within an extinct super volcano, so that's kind of cool. It's not that we don't care about the environment or anything like that. We absolutely do, and so do these mining companies. And I think as we go forward, the narrative's going to change where you realize that these mining companies aren't just coming in and destroying the earth so they can get valuable minerals out of the ground. They're people that are coming in and supporting families and changing the way the world operates for the better in some instances. And so that's what they're going to try to do with this lithium mine. And, just like as an example of how they're cognizant of what's going on and what they're not going to do, it is open pit. And so one of the reasons it's open pit is because they're not allowed to go below the water table. So none of their operation will actually break into the groundwater there in the area to help prevent like the pollution of the water in that area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's good. And you touched on something I kind of want to elaborate on, and I'll try to keep this from going into a soapbox rant, but it might. You always have to pick your poison. So there's a huge push towards this green initiative. And you touched on the fact that these mining companies, they're just as environmentally conscious as anybody. Whether it's because they have to be or they want to be, it doesn't matter. They are. And, everyone wants this quote unquote green technology. And for those listening, my eyes are rolled in the back of my head when I say that because it's an oxymoron. So you don't want to produce oil and natural gas and coal and nuclear. You want to sustain EV vehicles.
With batteries.
Yeah, batteries. You want to sustain the production of electric vehicles. Well, you need rare earth minerals. You need lithium. You need nickel. You need cobalt. You need copper. You need gold. And then you need some rare earth stuff that only China has, which that's a whole different issue. But then you're not supposed to mine it. Okay? So you can't use coal. You can't use nuclear because that's dangerous, which is also wrong. But that's a
Different conversation.
different conversation for a different day. So you're not allowed to use all of these traditional, let's call them, modes of energy production. But then you want to make batteries. Well, hey, Mr. Bright Scholar, batteries don't produce energy, they store it. So you want to move to electric vehicles as a primary mode of transportation, but then you still need to make the energy somehow. See Southern California right now in the middle of summer when they have rolling blackouts and you're not allowed to charge your vehicle in peak hours. So you have all these environmentalists, you have all these people who quote unquote care about the environment and they want to move to quote unquote green energy, which is just garbage that has been pushed in the facade of something that is environmentally friendly. And then when you get to the point where the rubber meets the road, pardon the pun, and you need to mine the minerals in order to reach your dream of sustainability, they're like, oh, well, you can't put a giant hole, you can't put a 9-acre hole in the ground. We can't have that happen. There's buckwheat that you'll disturb. What? Okay. Not in my backyard, right? That's the saying. Not in my backyard. So we can't do that here. So we're going to let other nations like India and China and Russia and other places, we're going to let them dig the giant hole in the ground. We're going to let South African countries and 9-year-olds, we're going to let them dig the holes in the ground. All right, we're going to let them ruin their environment, and they're going to do it in a way that's way less sustainable than what we're going to do it.
That's what always kills me is like, if you want this done, you want these batteries, you want these materials, and you want them the most environmentally
And if you want it done
responsible
right,
way done,
yeah,
you want it done here.
Yeah, and that goes with mining lithium to oil, natural gas, coal. If you want it done in the most sustainable way possible, we are the country that does it. And Canada does a great job too, don't get me wrong. The West does it better than the East, by far. So, yeah, it just irritates me when people want to have their cake and eat it too, and they don't see the forest for the trees.
The argument from maybe the other side is that when we put these mines in, when we put these developments in, that's ground that's pretty much lost forever. I mean, yeah, the mines reclaim the earth and everything else after they're done and so on and so forth. But in the case of like development, like we don't get habitat back when a chunk of public land gets sold off, or if a piece of federal land gets turned over to state control and then they sell it, then that's pretty much gone forever. We don't get that land back. And the argument from the side of the people that are trying to prevent all these mines is that we're trying not to lose what we already have.
What Joey, the argument he makes there makes a little bit of sense, but I don't think it's entirely accurate. I think you're kind of painting with a broad brush there and a little bit of stereotypes because I look at our company, who is an open pit mining company in the southeast United States, and I've seen the reclamation projects, and the land afterwards looks like it was never disturbed. In fact, sometimes it looks better than it did before, and those habitats seem to be coming back. So I don't know if it's entirely fair to say that, the ground is destroyed forever and the habitats are gone. You'll never get them back. I don't know that's accurate.
No, and I would agree with you, but I think the message needs to be sent out there that these mines do reclaim they reclaim that land. Because when we see a mine go in, we don't ever see a mine that's done with a piece of land. Like that's never ever on the news or anything like that. We always see what the mine is doing and the startup and the operation. Nobody ever sees what like AMI when they're done mining a piece of land. I don't think I've ever seen those pictures, and that's something that we should be proud of, and I know we are. But the message needs to be sent to I guess you could just call them the opposition.
Yeah, or
that these
even
mines-
put into public perception.
Yeah,
'Cause the
'cause-
public
yeah.
always sees the operation of the mine. They never see when it's done.
Right, and
Yep,
we've
exactly.
won the like highest level of awards for reclamation at our company. And one time I saw a photo. It was like before, during mining, and after like a couple years after mining, and it was gorgeous. Like you could have built a golf course on this thing. It was absolutely amazing. I couldn't believe it. Like if you'd have took me there and said, "Oh, 5 years ago, this was a giant hole in the ground. There were trucks everywhere, and they're mining, clay out of this." I would not have believed you even for a second. It looked pristine. It was great. So knowing that can be done, I have to imagine that other companies are doing the same thing because the attention is on them. Like Joey said, the attention is on them, but they're losing the narrative battle massively. And even a guy like Joey, who would be willing to defend them, his first comment in this discussion was, "Well, we're never going to get that land back. It's disturbed. The habitat's gone." And he works for a mining company that actively, makes that not true and keeps the habitat and makes it look great. So that just is a great example of how far behind the eight ball these mining companies are in some of these discussions.
Well, that's what we know about mining anyway, but let's transition into our guest here today. Our guest here today is John Belkowitz, and as much as we know about mining, he knows that plus some about literally everything, but especially concrete. We go into this conversation with John, and John's been on the program before. We've had Dr. Belkowitz on twice now, so this will be his third time. He is now our most favorite guest. He has leapfrogged Mr. Betts from Argos.
Oh,
Yeah. So we'll have to have Ryan Betts on again to reclaim his throne as the favorite guest of the podcast.
well, we've got other guest interviews that are going to be in the hopper here, so they'll be coming out on a nice regular schedule.
Yeah, for sure. But, Dr. Belkowitz here, he originally came on to promote a new book that he has authored. And he actually talks about several other books that they've published in the past that I wasn't aware of, so that was interesting. But in typical Dr. Belkowitz fashion, we get about an hour into the interview before he mentions the book. So,
And then we got another hour into the interview before he was like, "Oh wait, I have something else I need to say," but we all had to leave, so it was unfortunate, but it was a great interview. You can check out Dr. Belkowitz's books on blurb.com, the ABCs of ASR. You guys know John. He's a fantastic speaker. Seems like he's got something going on with these books. Didn't realize he had like 10 books out there and an app apparently. So
Yeah.
next time we talk to him, we're going to have to ask about his mix design app too.
yeah, he's got so many irons in the fire. I thought I was busy, like in my work life, personal life, like never sleep. He's got kids on top of everything else that he's doing professionally.
4.
Yeah.
4.
So this man has found a way to extend the amount of hours in a day, and good on him. I'm thoroughly impressed with what he's able to accomplish on a daily basis and then throughout his career.
Well, it's funny. This weekend, I had someone ask me, like, we're going through all the things that I do, and they were like, "Do you ever sleep?" I'm like, "Well, yeah. Have you met Josh Hare? You should hear about all the things he's into."
I don't have kids. I wouldn't have enough time to sustain my current lifestyle and then also have kids. So I'm in awe of people who maintain a good work-life balance and maintain a household. It's absolutely phenomenal to me. You two are on my short list of guys where I'm just absolutely amazed at how much you guys are able to accomplish with the time that you have. But then right on the top of that list is John as well. So he'll mention some of that. We'll get into some topics that keep him so busy on a daily basis, but it's a good listen. It's a great interview, as it always is with Dr. Belkowitz. So without further ado, here he is. Y'all enjoy. Man,
For you, brother.
if we can get a Dr. John Belkowitz soapbox rant on this show, I'm about it.
Oh, this is going to be in rant. And look, did you hear that? I'm cleaning up my language because all 4 kids are going to school. So, Josh, as you said, we're in Jersey now. We moved out here what was that, 4 weeks ago? So we moved out here 4 weeks ago, and it was, we decided back in March that we were going to make the move. So we put everything in pods and trucks and trailers. I mean, within a few months. The hardest thing was, it's how does the joke go? Why are New Yorkers so depressed? And the answer is the light at the end of the tunnel is New Jersey. And for some reason, when people ask me how difficult is it to get a new technology into the construction industry, I say, well, it's not getting a mortgage or buying a house in New Jersey. And, living in Colorado on 5 acres, watching the sunrise every flipping morning was a dream. But living in Colorado is getting much tougher. The water table, the fires, in March through May, we had 5 fires within minutes of the house. So we decided to make that change, and it wasn't easy. I tell you, as tough as I try to seem, I was pretty upset every day. I loved Colorado. It was my sponsor family's house. It's where we started our business, where we born and raised our kids. It was, but it was a good time to move. Now that we've moved here with my folks and we have the kids to help us out, Whitney and I could do some reading. And I've just been doing a lot more studying, especially other planets and this planet. It's just pretty interesting stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, I like how you threw that out there. Like that was like a normal thing to say. Like, yeah, I've been doing a lot of research and studying on, exoplanets. I've learned is awesome.
I wouldn't mind if you guys reached out to any of the folks at NASA or Icon 3D or APIS Core or who's the other one with Contour Craft. There's a lot of folks who NASA is paying to do research on building lunar structures or structures on Mars. And I love the idea of it. I love the rapid pace, the amount of money, but the idea of putting a cementitious composite on a planet that goes from negative 287 degrees Fahrenheit to positive 280 or 237 degrees Fahrenheit in a 14-day Earth cycle, that's the lunar cycle, like concrete won't last, right? Unless you're protecting it. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that we've done to study on that, but it just seems like the dumbest flipping idea in the world. So
economics don't work anyway, unless you're going to make the lunar cement on this. You can't fly cement up there in the spaceship.
Yes,
Joey's
you
already
can.
done that research.
You can. What? It costs a lot of money.
Yeah, it costs. Country.
There's a wonderful book written by Evan Loomis called Elon Musk. This book is all about rockets. And in the book, this book is about rockets. In the book, you meet Elon Musk, who likes to build rockets, and every single rocket explodes. Like, you think he was making money off of that? You saw him see a rocket explode. Oh, sorry. They saw a rocket explode. He's like, oh, there's that profit margin going up. No. This endeavor that we're doing to build a structure on the moon is almost like, It's one of those pivotal moments in our history, almost like the Cold War era, where we're going up against Russia, but we've got to show the military might is greater, or we're one of the European nation that has to plant its flag. Building a structure on the moon is that milestone that we're trying to get to before any other country. And you want to bet your sweet bippy other countries, I don't know what a sweet bippy is, by the way, are doing the same thing. So anyway, yeah, I would love for you guys to have Jason Ballard or Alex LaRue, excuse me, or Dimitri Julius, any of those jabronis from NASA. That would be great. I think you would love it, because it reminds me that what you would do to them is what you would do to what you did to Colin Lobo. And I can't remember who said it, but you're like, what do you think is going to happen in the next so many years with this? And Colin's like, well, I don't have the data to make that prediction. And I can't remember which one of you three said it. And you're like, whoa, come on, Colin. Why do you think you're on this show? We do that here. Yeah, again, you guys, best show. I think it's time to make the transition from active minerals to.
No, we appreciate that. There's nothing in this world we'd love more than being able to do this show way more. It's funny. We try to tell people, if you hear the show too often, that means we're not busy enough selling Acti-Gel. Because when you don't hear the show, that's because Joey was out at 2 ready mix plants last week and installing tanks in 2 different places. And Josh was out putting a new third-party warehouse together while also servicing like this Amazon type project that's going on. Oh, and by the way, I was on the West Coast because I was attending conferences and different things. So it's just one thing after another, and that's just 1 week, and that's every week. So we have to physically schedule time in our day. It's like, all right, we are going to do this because we love this, and we're going to make this happen. Even if it means we're going to work 12 hours a day, we're going to get this done.
Yeah. So there was a question I wanted to ask you guys, and there was an endeavor that I wanted to start with all of our free time that we have. It's been pissing me off so much. You guys remember the P2P movement?
P2P?
It sounds familiar.
Yeah, P2P. Man, were you guys still in school? P2P was the prescriptive to performance movement. It started, I want to say, back in 2005, 2006, and really ramped up in 2006, 2007 timeframe.
So yes, we were at university during that time, and Dr. Brown at Middle Tennessee State was like huge into that. I think Tennessee DOT was like one of the first places that was like, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, you can meet all the specs. You can design it however you want it.
And where is the P2P movement today?
Haven't followed, brother. You told me.
The P2P movement went through what we call, there's a lovely Wired magazine article published back in, I want to say 2002, 2012, on something called the hype curve. And what it is you have a technology that's introduced to the industry. It starts at 0.0, and the industry and marketing starts to sell it. And there's this gradual increase of expectation until we get to the peak of inflated expectations. And then all of a sudden the contractors get it, like self-consolidating concrete, it's going to save the effing world. And then the contractors get it, and then it goes, and it hits something called the trough of disillusionment, right? It's just this drop. Now, if the technology is awesome, or it finds a foothold in the industry that truly matters, then it gets to this path of enlightenment, right? And this is where it finds its anchor and its foundation in the industry for us to build on. So when it comes to SCC, when it comes to P2P, a little bit of RCC, there was an inflation of expectation, or inflated expectations in this trough of disillusionment. And the same thing happened with P2P. That's where I met Rich Seishi the first time. He was giving a presentation on high volume fly ashes or mixes. And this was in 2006 at the Ultra High Performance Concrete Convention in Dallas, Texas. And Rich was giving a talk on 2 things. He gave a talk on 50% Class F fly mixes for fast track early mixes mixes that got 5,000 psi or 8,000 psi in like 12 hours or 24 hours. And Rich is just like, you're lying if you think you're going performance and you're being sustainable when you're creating these mixes, because they had powder contents of 1,000 pounds or 1,200 pounds. And then he also talked about the great cement shortage of 2017. But anyway, with this P2P movement, nothing ever came out of it. It never came out of that trough of disillusionment because there was no real benefit, value-added performance. The industry wasn't buying that. And with carbon negative concrete and carbon neutral concrete, I read an ACI, and I'm sorry to call this guy out, the president's address about, chasing carbon neutral concrete. And if you look in part 1 and part 2, there is no true definition about carbon neutral concrete. And I ask the people, I ask your listeners, I ask you, what is the See, I didn't cuss. Because right now my 8-year-old uses the F word better than I do. True statement. What is the definition of carbon negative concrete? What is the definition of carbon? And I'm not asking you to do that right now, but I want somebody to freaking sit down and write it down. And if they can't do it, I have no problem. So what is the definition of either carbon neutral concrete or carbon negative concrete?
Well, I think we should take a stab at it. Josh, how would you define that?
Please and thank you.
Ignoring enough variables for you to say that it's carbon negative.
Come on.
That's how you make
paying
carbon
off,
negative concrete.
buying enough carbon credits that you can call you.
Yeah.
No. I want us to put a stake in the freaking ground and say, hey, if we're going to have a movement, because that's what ACI did. Everybody was standing and shaking hands over this freaking piece of paper. Like, come on. Like, there is a definition. I think this is a waste of money, a waste of resources, just like I saw another Roman concrete freaking article published using U.S. taxpayer money. Like, we get it. They use seawater. Who gives a shit? Who cares?
I love it because in the last interview we had with Dr. Belkowitz here, he referenced Roman concrete and how much he hated articles about it.
I don't know if you went back and listened to our Carbon Central podcast we did at the end of last year. So we did a deep dive into this whole reducing carbon footprint in our industry and what it means for the world. And we actually did the research that other people aren't doing. So the number you hear thrown around is that our industry, and they combine cement and concrete, is that there's 8% output, CO2 output, that we are responsible for globally. And number one, you can't really think in global terms on this because you can only control what you can control. And we can control to some degree what happens in our country. So we're going to look at our country alone. What does our industry represent in CO2 emissions in our country? Well, that's really about 3% when you combine cement and concrete. And then you take it a step further, do a life cycle analysis of what it really means to measure the impact of concrete. And some people know now because we exposed it, but concrete, cured, hardened concrete, is a carbon sink. So for every 1 ton of CO2 that goes out, 0.6 tons of CO2 are getting taken back up into the concrete. So the net effect that we have to deal with here, we're representing maybe 1.4% of all CO2 emissions here in the United States. And yet our industry wants to do things that are not maximizing efficiency, not maximizing performance, not maximizing profits either. To do what? Reduce 1% of CO2? You know what's a better idea, John? Why don't we go replace every asphalt road out there with concrete? Because you know what? There's not a number on how much CO2 is being produced by the asphalt industry. There isn't one. We looked.
Well,
Nobody's looked harder than we looked. We looked. So we went and we compiled all different numbers from many different sources, and we came up
right.
with a number. And guess what they are? They're actually probably around 8% in the United States. So if they're 8% and we're 1.4%, and we can switch those around, guess who's going to end up better?
You know, I'm not going to disagree with that. The problem with that is that, and this is the harsh reality, I don't give a about the asphalt industry. They can't have any of my time, and that's not even to be jealous of the lobbyists that they hire or the luck that they have. I have to worry about my industry, your industry. And I agree with everything you just said, except for the fact that, you know what? Asphalt industry is employing a lot of people. They're somehow getting under the radar. There's only 24 hours and 20 minutes in the day. The government decided to take 20 minutes away from me for freaking leap year. So I only have 24 hours in the day, and for some reason I need to sleep. So anyway, so my computer is not working. One of you guys mind looking up carbon negative material? Because there is a definition out there on carbon negative material, and I believe it's the amount of materials embodied in creating the material through its entire life. That means cradle to grave, as in landfilling as well, has to be a negative output. So it actually has to take carbon from the environment, and a carbon neutral material, not talking concrete, carbon neutral material, it has to be net zero. Whether the material it pulls from the environment, as well as the material that, or the carbon that the carbon it pulls from the environment and the carbon that is created, net zeros out or becomes zero, or it's just so carbon, whatever it is, it equals zero. The equation equals zero. With carbon negative, it's negative CO2 pounds per whatever. So was anybody able to look that up?
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much summarized it pretty well.
Is that what we're saying with concrete for both carbon negative and carbon neutral?
Well, that's what we were going to say earlier. You get on these great rules, brother. We're not going to interrupt you when you're doing this because we love you. And we
Yeah,
have
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But our definition of what would you say a carbon neutral, carbon negative concrete is, and as if you take the life cycle analysis of the sum of the parts that are making up the industry's function, and you put them together, they should equal zero or less than zero carbon output.
Entire life cycle.
Correct.
So from when before it was pulled out of the ground, because cradle is assuming that it's already been born, that it's in the cradle. But for me to get rock, I have to clear out the ground. I have to rip out the rock, or I have to blow up the rock, rip it up, or dredge it up. And I have to bring the equipment to dredge it. I have to bring the equipment to. So that's my first problem. Where do we start this?
Yeah, that's fair.
Do we start it with bringing the equipment out to the job site too? And when I say the job site, I mean the quarry, or even the place where we're getting limestone. So let's ignore that for a second. Let's say we start at cradle, that all our materials, they just happen, magically appear. I'm trying to imagine a world where where that happens, and before that, I'm in the information gathering phase. And during that phase, I read the ACI president's letter about reaching carbon neutrality. And he immediately goes to reducing embodied carbon and carbon emissions. There's no carbon neutrality. And I think I'm getting to where you guys have already gone to, is that this is not really an effort for our industry to do better for our children and the planet. This is an effort to sell something. Is that a fair assessment?
We've been harping on that. Encourage anyone to go back and listen to our episode where we spent 40 minutes deep diving into that exact point, when all the drivers of this are multinational mega corporations that are coming to our country and telling us how we need to run our businesses. And they're being propped up by either NGOs or industry related organizations that just don't have the manpower to combat the messaging that we're seeing coming out of these corporations.
And if I may, real quick, I'm famous
Please.
conspiratorial, and I would like to add that every environmental initiative since the damn 70s has been about selling something, not about helping the planet.
Why does that have a stigma to it, being a conspiracy theorist? Have you read Tim O'Neill's like
I didn't
CIA
get the
and
label,
Marilyn Manson? Hey, listen, that new Tim O'Neill book that was on the Joe Rogan podcast, he spent 20 years being a conspiracy theorist. That's a dope book. That's an amazing book if you've never read it. Anyway, I'm not going to discount that. And if you really wanted to be carbon negative, carbon neutral, I tell you, Matt McCombs, formerly from Martin Marietta and now at Intelligent Concrete, said if people were really serious about carbon negative, salespeople would call up the job site before the concrete was released. That is the first way on a new job site to be carbon neutral or even carbon negative, that you make sure everybody's ready and you don't have to throw out a truck, right? Bring them some donuts too. Maybe you created a little bit of methane. That's okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. Joey and I have known Matt McCombs for years. I mean, what, 7, 8 years now?
Have you guys listened to our last podcast on maturity?
No, I didn't, but I saw it going out on LinkedIn. They were offering gift cards for good questions. Very glad I wasn't on an airplane when I was reading that. I would have won that gift card.
Dude, Matt and I, it was a friggin' no holds barred cage match from the WWF, not the WWE bullshit. Like Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Well, I was taking the stance where if somebody's not going to pay to do the ASTMC 1074 correctly as a consultant, I'm not going to work with them. If you're not willing to put the proper amount of work into the 1074, get the datum temperature, use it the right way, there's going to be way too much money lost. And depending on the job site, certain factor of safety that I can't predict, I don't want to be a part of that.
You bring up, like, you don't want to be a part of this project because really liability is the word you're dancing around there.
Right.
And that's what Colin Lobo said was the reason we don't have performance-based specs. And he said it ended up too much liability.
And that's why I want you to interview Rich. If you could write this down, one of the questions is the same that you would ask Colin, which is, why don't we have performance? And I'm not going to spoil this, but Rich has a different answer. And bear in mind, Rich used to sell, and I think he still sells, around 1.2 million cubic yards a year. Now, another thing, not to put in a tag in here for Acti-Gel, because I would like to get to the book here in a second. If somebody was really serious about carbon negative or carbon neutral concrete, they would use the hell out of crusher fines in concrete, right?
Yeah.
They would use as many effing crusher fines as they could. And to do that, you've got to use something like Acti-Gel. For a little bit of Acti-Gel, you can use a ton of crusher fines. Again, is that true? Oh, but it costs money. I hate it when people say that, by the way. Oh, it costs money. Right?
Well, most of the time we can save them money by being able to use that many crusher fines.
Depends on where you're at.
Yeah.
Or you have to bring that same thing.
Yeah.
If the expectation, well, that's another discussion. The expectation that something that saves the environment should save us money is just freaking ludicrous. But
yeah,
it's hard. It's ridiculous.
Not existent in some places, but in some places it is. Yeah, no, you're right, and I appreciate you saying that. Everybody knows we do this podcast as a discussion on concrete, not a discussion about Acti-Gel.
So, Joey, I just sent you via Messenger that clip that I did on the book. Do you guys mind if I mention the book?
No, please.
No, that was the point, the genesis of you coming on. So we absolutely are going to do that. And we want to know what the hell you're writing. This isn't, I mean, we're interested.
I've been writing books for a while. We have a bunch of books out. David Mallory wrote some books. I wrote a book with David. I wrote a book with Mallory. We got the Concrete Moss book, the ABCs of ASR, the ABCs of Epic Concrete Failures, the 1, 2, 3s of concrete and ABCs of concrete strength. We're very 1, 2, 3 and ABC, I just realized. So we're very trying to take the basics of concrete and make them palatable for, a larger industry, especially the ABCs of ASR. The concrete moss book is more like a photojournalism thing. It's just concrete and moss really make a beautiful thing. Dangerous, but beautiful. So the book, the reason why I started writing the book is because there's so much effed up concrete and so much great concrete. The clip, Joey, that I sent you, and if you don't mind sending it to the other guys, is, just looking at all the different concrete over the last 60 years, because some of the original concrete from the sidewalks is still in place. And you can actually track the change in aggregate. You could see where it started out 3/4, 1 inch rounded river rock, really, really pretty stuff. And then you could see where they started going out of state or, to a new source and the rock color started changing. And then eventually there was this change over to a crushed quartz or not a crushed quartz or crushed granite. And it was a combination of crushed granite with this alluvial rock. And then ultimately, was it 5 years ago, 7 years ago, they did this major changeover with, just 100% crushed aggregate. And you can see this throughout this 1.55 mile loop. So, doing, dedicating a chapter to the change in aggregate might not interest a lot of people. But to me, it's one of the things that tells a story about what concrete is going through and the damages that, especially in certain parts where they put an excessive amount of salt, you can see how the concrete just kind of withered away. And then, we have a chapter called The Hammer of Thor, where, you got a lot of landscaping here and you got trucks that back over the concrete. And it's, 4-inch thick concrete that was designed at 4,000 PSI with no steel and no real subgrade to it. So it can handle a truck driving over it with a 24-inch wheelbase, right? And of course, that doesn't work. So what we did is in one chapter, we're analyzing a lot of these, and it happens throughout this run, just where you can see the wheelbases from the concrete or from the truck in the concrete. And then several pop outs. Oh, my favorite is I call them, the chapter's called Toe Clippers and Trippers. Toe Clippers and Trippers, where I'm going on the run and you'll either have, a little edge like this or maybe a 1-inch edge of the concrete being lifted up. And what happened was they did the concrete panels in 2 sections to 4 sections, and concrete slab is 4 inches thick and the joint is maybe 1/4 of an inch, maybe 3/8 of an inch thick. And lo and behold, the joint didn't activate. So when they were settling underneath the slab and when the trees, they putting a lot of these oaks, these white American oaks, these maple trees, the inner diameter is like 5 feet, 4 feet from the slab, and it's literally lifting up the concrete. And you have some slabs that have been lifted 6 inches, 8 inches into the air. So we go over the analysis about how that happens, what forces need to be generated to lift a concrete slab 6 inches into the air, 8 inches into the air, go over the science and the engineering. And then there's a section on how to stop it from happening. Like with the Hammer of Thor, when they're driving over the concrete slab, go buy some AM2 mounting from a DRMO, from military freaking auction. For $50, you could put some aluminum over it and stop the concrete from freaking getting destroyed. Like, you've done it how many freaking times? Like, is it surprising that concrete is not good in flexural strength? Do people not know this shit? Especially concrete without steel in it. Like, what the F?
Really interesting. This book. Are you gonna send me a signed copy of it?
Sure, you buy a signed copy, I'll send you a signed copy, brother. Are you kidding me? Shit, any of the books that you buy on Blurb, and I'll send you guys the freaking link. Any of those books that you buy on Blurb, I'm gonna have to send it to Joey. Gosh, Joey's just, everybody loves Joey. I'll send it to Joey on what's it called? On what is this called? Messenger? Because if I do anything on my computer, it'll shut down. Blurb plus Belkowitz. Brother, if you send me the copy of that book, I will freaking sign it for you. I'll draw a picture. ABCs of ASR. Here you go. Here's a good one. The Concrete Moss book is definitely the prettiest book I think we have. The ABCs of ASR, the 1, 2, 3s, and the ABCs of concrete strength, tensile strength, and modulus elasticity. That one's really interesting. There's things in there I learned about concrete that I should have learned in college, like Mohs circle. I hate Mohs circle, and this thing made Mohs circle freaking awesome.
All right.
So, you know, with the trees being so close, you know, I'd like to talk about one of the fixes. And, you know, I don't know if you guys know this, but Freehold, New Jersey is one of the bamboo capitals of the United States.
What?
I know,
No.
right? Like, there is a major bamboo provider, and not just one type of bamboo, like 50 or 60 different types of bamboo. My dad has a bamboo forest. I bought him 2 types of bamboo. Like, how does that, what? Like, how do you have bamboo in Freehold, New Jersey? Did you guys ever watch Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle?
Yeah, not since college, but yeah, we saw.
All right. So not since college. One of the major actors in there, what's his name? Carl Penn Modi, Carl Penn Modi, went to the same high school as him here in Freehold Township. Like Bruce Springsteen, Freehold Borough, right? Like, it's just Freehold is an awesome place.
It's a shame it's in New Jersey. You know, there was a great moment in a kids film recently, The Addams Family, and the Addams Family is talking about. So they're like in their haunted mansion. The movie starts. They're in this haunted mansion, but it's like years ago, and the townspeople riot and they force them out of their home and they're forced to leave. And that's the start of the movie. And they're packed up in their cars, head down the highway, and they're like, we just had to go to the most awful, despicable, dirtiest, nastiest place we could think of. And then you see him and says, welcome to New Jersey.
Right. Camden, New Jersey. Hey, you know what? Nothing for nothing. New Jersey is a beautiful place. They call it the Garden State, not because it's the armpit of America. You know, there are places that I think fulfill that motto more so than Jersey. And the orchards out here, the forests, you know, it's just, I did miss living on the East Coast. I mean, it is beautiful. I mean, shoot, Pennsylvania, Paul. When we were driving through, I mean, there are parts of Pennsylvania that I forgot about. Shoot, we're going to Dutch Wonderland next week.
Are you really? We're talking about going there in 2 weeks. It's funny you said.
Yeah, we're heading out there. There's a balloon festival in Strausberg or Lidditz or whatever the hell it's called up
Lidditz
there.
is in the middle of nowhere, but there's a nice quarry over there. If you need some good rock.
We're gonna go check out a freaking quarry. So the books that we're doing, they're all about having fun with concrete. None of them have been put on the New York Times bestseller list. Almost. No, that's not true. That's not true. That's a lie. But we had like this huge month when all these books, especially it was the ABCs of ASR, like it was like 15 books being bought. I was like, holy shit! Like, this is it. It's about to take off. Yeah, it turned out to be me buying books from my family. So, yeah.
Oh, that's
like, yeah, so definitely we'll send you guys some books. And what we used to do is we used to have a book writing competition at Intelligent Concrete, and we had a board of 7 judges. Everybody from Brian Green to Robert Lewis, Chuck Weiss, Paul Bryant. Folks from the Army Corps and different engineering firms, and they chose the top book. We published all the books, but the top book, the writers got a $200 gift card. We published their book first. We paid for everything, and then we bought them and the whole team their books too. So we're bringing that back. We're reviving that, and we're writing a few books this year. Next 2 years, excuse me. So it's pretty. And we are looking for the book that I'm writing, The Concrete on My Block. We are looking for sponsors. We figured out it's going to cost us, and we pay for everything. So a book like this will cost us somewhere around $15,000 to $25,000 to write. And that's with sweat equity. But we need to hire some photographers. to get this done. So if any of your listeners are, encouraged to be part of a book and they want to be part of the profit sharing, we're willing to give them a piece. Maybe I should discuss that with Whitney first. I should discuss that with I'd like to get to the last thing because Whitney and I have a story for you for the concrete mix design. And we needed your guys' input on this because I feel I'm right. And of course, Whitney is always right. So,
Yeah, well, real quick, before we jump into that, did you rethink of how you're going to tell us the solution to the trees, like slab
oh my
jacking
gosh, that's what it was.
concrete sidewalks? Because I wanted to know
Yeah,
the
yeah.
answer to that. But when you were telling me the problem, I was like, wow, I wish I knew how to solve that other than like cutting the root and removing it.
Well, the solution of it starts when you plant the tree, and this is why I was going into bamboo, and I totally forgot about the bamboo story. I apologize. So if you don't treat bamboo the right way, it can take over your entire yard. So when we first got bamboo, it takes about 2 years for it to really take off. We didn't know that when it takes off, the roots go down, they shoot across, and they come up wherever they want to. So we were about 2.5 years, 3 years, and my mom, we were living with mom and dad. Sammy was either just born or before he was born. And my mom is pulling out bamboo roots and shoots from the other side of the fence. And I'm telling you, my dad has a bamboo. I'll send you guys pictures. And we go back to the guy. We're like, listen, we didn't plant the bamboo here. Why is it growing? And that's when he told us. So he came back with these hard plastic sheets that went about 4 feet into the ground. And his guys drove these sheets on either side of the bamboo 4 feet into the ground to stop the bamboo roots from migrating under the fence and into the rest of the yard. So the way to solve that, and it has to be done early. What you'll see in some of these pictures, like I said, is that the roots, a lot of these maple trees, oaks, wisterias, they have very shallow roots, and they'll raise the ground up, and they'll crawl underneath the concrete and just raise the concrete up and drop other slabs. So the way to address that is the same way that you would do with bamboo shoots and roots. Ooh, that rhymed. Is that you're driving down a barrier to protect that concrete from the root system. You can't go if you go back and you start chopping down the roots. What happens is the tree loses its stability and it starts turning. And we have pictures of that. Folks have done that where they've literally done like a geotechnical hazard where they've cut through the roots, they've tossed everything to the right, and they put in a concrete or a brand new concrete slab. And now you can see that the tree is doing this, which is pretty cool, but that's why we have a lot of problems during storms.
Right. No, that's interesting. It's always been fascinating to me that you take something as hard and strong as concrete, and it almost always loses when it's competing for space against something else.
Well, that's because it's a rigid material. It's a rigid material that doesn't have any resiliency, especially residential concrete, to the forces that are created, residual forces, tensile and shear forces that overcome the capacity of concrete's ability. So,
right, which essentially, in effect, makes it brittle when compared to things that
it's already a brittle material, but like you have grass growing in a concrete joint. How the hell does grass? And it's not the grass, it's the accumulation of soil and grass that then absorbs water, that then continuously builds up pressure, almost like ASR gel. How the hell does ASR gel, a jelly, the same thing you put on your toast, how is that going to destroy my concrete? Well, it's not the jam or jelly. It's the residual forces, the confining forces that create a residual stress that overcome the tensile and shear capacity of the hydrated cement matrix.
Although we understand that, and you articulated it beautifully, by the way.
Thank you, sir.
But although we understand that's the answer, like on its face, like that's just wild.
Right. Well, I mean, you look at technology, I wouldn't say it always loses. There are some instances where concrete has won out, but it's not titanium, right? And that's the reality. Like, we can go back to calcium oxychloride formation. How does de-icing salt? Like, what? What do you mean we're using calcium hydroxide to create a more expansive hydration or phase that has less strength than the hydrated cement matrix, but for some reason it turns it into rubble? How does that make sense? So I think there's, there was a moment I was doing my master's degree when I realized that everything we understood about concrete from cradle to grave is a freaking guess. And funny enough, my dog pissed on my advisor's desk at the very same moment. That's a true story. True story. I had a little 5.2 pound dog named Ferdinand the Bull Belkowitz. He was a Maltese poodle mix. That's how I proposed to Whitney. And I had been reading Andrew Allen's paper on the calcium silicate hydrate. No, it was I.G. Richardson's paper, Calcium Silicate Hydrate 1. And it was talking about the development of the Hadley grain structure when we go into this, or not the Hadley grain structure, the calcium hydroxide shell that we get after the mixing phase and we go into the dormancy period. And I asked the question, well, how do we know it's just calcium hydroxide? How thick is that shell? How long does it last? And how strong is it? And I called up a few people, and I believe one of them was Andrew Allen, and I wanted to know a definitive answer. And he goes, well, and I was like, I'm Jewish. I know what that well means. When somebody goes, well, that means like there's a little bit of artistic hand waving. We know, we don't know. It's a very specific cement we were using. We were mixing in we were using an ultrasonicator. We had a water cement ratio, blah, blah, blah. So for this cement, we're guessing that it was around 10 microns thick at certain points. And that was a model that we did. Like, whoa, what do you mean? And it just, my entire world just came crashing down. You kind of take that to the practical side. It's not that everything that the practical level understands about concrete is a guess. They're not even guessing. Concrete is a commodity-based material. To me, the most technical concrete in the world is the residential concrete products, right? They have to do some of those amazing things in the world. Got to cure up overnight. And I hate to say this, but the lowest end of the finishing industry is working on it, right? The least amount of cement, it has to cost the least. And it's 80% of what we do. What we do is a guess. What the industry does with our concrete is worse than a guess. And trying to educate that, like ACI lost its path, and I'm an ACI member. I really like going to ACI conventions, but ACI lost its path many, many moons ago. And I think there needs to be a change up to the industry, ACI specifically, ASCE, ASTM, so that we can start getting into the practical level a lot more. But we're doing an uphill battle, going at Mach 10. Did I go through that fix for you? Did I answer that question?
Yeah, no, the fix was great. And it's a shame that you think ACI lost its way, but I know that you do put considerable time into the things they put out and try to understand what they're saying, what their way is, what the guidance is they're giving to the industry. And I believe that's where we're headed next. Yeah.
We have one of the greatest opportunities ever in the ACI industry since we had Ken Hover as president, right? Ken Hover was my favorite ACI president. There wasn't, maybe Ann Ellis comes in second place, but Charles Namai happens to be one of the coolest cats in the concrete industry. And I had the pleasure of meeting him in a very forgetful meeting. I'm sure he doesn't remember who I am, but it was just after he gave a presentation at the World of Concrete back in 2005. I was still in college, going for another degree, and he gave a talk that rivaled Mike Thomas's talk on concrete admixtures. And who better to give a talk on concrete admixtures? And I believe he's somebody who at one point understood the industry, especially the chemical side of the industry. But I have not been impressed with the direction that we're going, as we've already talked about. Now, my belief is if you don't like something, then be a part of the solution. Just don't gripe and complain about it. And I love complaining. Oh, I'm so good. Whitney will tell you I'm good at complaining. True story. So yeah, I'm part of ACI. I do the best I can working for free, and that's what most people do. But it has become an academic endeavor. We have long since left the consensus-based industry. 80% of what we do is in the dust somewhere back there at ACI. So it's an unfortunate reality, and I'd love to have an argument about that with folks. I'd love to be proven wrong too, but yeah.
No, it does feel very academic when you go there. But people ask us all the time, how come you're not, am I going to see you at ACI? How come you're not ever at ACI? I
Right.
mean, some of our best friends in the industry who we respect a ton. And it's like, well, what are we really getting done? That's our answer to them. It's like, we are in the
Networking.
business of, it's all right. That's about the only thing you can do.
Networking.
And for us, it's like, we are every week installing a new plants. So whatever value we're getting out of that has to be more valuable than that. And at this moment in our lives, I don't know. It's tough.
Well, networking, it's not an immediate return on investment. You're planting a seed. And what I would say is that it's not just networking, it's also building a community to support the effort. And just because it's academic doesn't mean it's bad. What's bad is that the lessons, because that's what academic was for, right? It was to figure out things that are happening messed up in the field, and then other research endeavors, not just research for the sake of research, but the research for the sake of growth. So we need people like you to stand up in a presentation and be like, so how the hell am I going to use this day to day? Because a lot of people won't know how to answer that question. And that realization that maybe this is me just hoping, because in my own committees, and I have made this complaint. So I'm the chair of ACI 241A, the application of nanotechnology in concrete. It used to be the application and the implementation, but we changed it. And I have been trying to get case studies published for years that go over how to use generic nanotechnologies in concrete, and they've been shut down because a lot of the folks who have voted on them, this was my complaint, a lot of folks who vote on them don't understand why these are important. There's enough academic papers that talk about what we've done in the lab. Well, sure as shit, the lab and the field are two totally different monsters. And what I can magically make happen in the lab, blah, 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 doesn't happen in the field as magically.
Right. Labcrete's a hell of a drug.
Right. Hell of a drug. So anyway, yeah, I am one of those people that is going to tell you guys, hey, come on out to ACI. We'll have dinner, right? We'll go have a nice steak dinner, chat, hang out, make fun of people, allow people to make fun of us, when we give presentations. Come out to ACI. I'll go to your committees. You guys come to my committees, right? The best time to give a presentation is the morning after an open bar. And
What?
right, people can't ask you questions, and if they ask you questions, they mean it because they're all glazy-eyed and tired and hungover.
If they're even there in the first place.
Oh, they're there. They always are. When you give a presentation, there's always somebody in the room who's like, whoa, wait a second. That's not how I would do it.
Yeah, you're usually that guy, John.
I have gotten into fights with people. Like, I have threatened 80-year-old men to, come on, let's go outside. My Uncle Rob has had to pull me out of meetings before. Somebody had once suggested that we go from 3 cylinders for ASTMC 39 and the ACIs, what is it, ACI, I can't remember, 302, 301, 309, whatever it is, from 3 cylinders per break date down to 1 or 2 because that's what the industry is doing. I about lost my bananas, like just unglued. And I had Katie Bartiger from the Bureau of Reclamation, Bud Werner from CTL Thompson pulling me out of the room. And Bud Werner re-said what I said in human speak, He was like, "That's the dumbest thing you've ever said. Haven't you read Dr. Bright Mather's work? You moron!"
I was about to say, is there any topic that was more thoroughly researched than like how many breaks you have to have and like inner lab between each technician making a very specific concrete, and then they round robined it, found all these places, and found exactly what the precision of bias was, and said, for any given cylinder made by a given tech on the same day with the same materials, you're going to have this much variation. And so,
Right.
what are the variables that you got to look out for with cylinder deformation, all the other things? If you have one, yes, that's just a guess.
Yeah.
This is what we think it is. If one or makes it on the job site and it gets ruined on the way to the lab.
Oh, how many times? Yeah, how many times does that happen?
Golly.
Have you guys talked to Mr. Subcheck about the time that he dropped a cylinder of Mooncrete?
No.
Yeah, you need to interview Mr. Subcheck too, or ask Mr. Betts about Mr. Subcheck, right? But yeah, basically,
Yeah, he's from
Kevy.
Colorado too. He's from Colorado too, right? Or that's where he worked.
Well, that's where he worked, and I think he's still in college. I haven't talked to him in a few years, but Mr. Subcheck and Mr. Betts went to school together at Alpena, and then they also started together with Mr. Nowak and Mr. Geyer. And I don't know why we called them all Misters. They were all younger than us, but Mr. Geyer, we ended up calling him the governor. All right, Whitney, Governor Geyer. But yeah, Kevy and Ryan went to school together, and then they started at Lafarge together. But yeah, Kevin was working for some research lab, and he was taking a cart out of a humidity room and had like 2 or 3 cylinders on it of Mooncrete, and hit a bump, and it just fell over onto the floor. So if you had one cylinder and the guy was hung over and he hits not that Kevin was, but he hits a bump. That's what I was yelling when I was being drugged out of the room by Katie. I was cussing. Oh.
Yeah, I bet you were. I mean, it made us mad. We're not even in that world anymore. I mean, we have a concrete lab, but it's not, I'm not doing a multi-million-dollar project. I'm trying to prove to somebody something is or isn't true usually.
What happens is people are making these decisions because you guys are not in the room, especially Joey. Joey was in the room, shit. But, there needs to be the practical side that says technical timeout. That maybe in your perfect little world where you have a robot that picks up your cylinder and puts it into your machine, that works.
John, I think the disconnect between the field and academia and what you're describing, I think that can be plugged into almost any industry or community or whatever. And while you were talking about that, I was thinking about, I'm in the hunting and conservation realm, and that's exactly, the issues that we see too. Guys in the field versus the state agencies or whatever, the biologists doing the work. And you could probably plug that into Josh, into the racing world. I'm sure there's guys that just race, and there are guys that do all kinds of tests, and you could probably find white papers on racing information. And then Paul, for like golf, the same thing could be said for golf. There's the guys in the field that just stay in the field and kind of stay in their own little world, and then there are kind of the other side where there's a lot of research going on that could really benefit the guys in the field if they would just step in and listen, and vice versa.
Well, yeah, anytime there's a huge number of variables, and concrete is certainly one of the best examples of that. There's a huge number of variables, and in the lab you can control said variables, and in the field you can't. So I mean that's basically that's especially what it is in racing. I mean, there's so many variables you don't even think about half of them, let alone try to control them.
My favorite one for golf, people doing something cool in the lab that never translated in the field.
It hit the ball perfect.
No, there's actually great technology for that, where they design the face of a driver. They call it twist face, but what it really is that the outside edges of the driver are actually slightly curved inward.
Like
so even if you miss hit on the toe or the heel above, the ball still goes straight. So, but one technology aspect that they didn't think about was sound. So they designed like the most impressive driver you've ever seen. It was this, great titanium alloy, tungsten, whatever, titanium face. Is unbelievably hot. The driver it'll just send it a mile, but it sounded like you were like hitting a steel pole with an aluminum baseball bat. It was just the most horrible ting, like really loud. It was shot out of a cannon. Nobody ever bought it. So all that, so that's like the lab-crete not transferring the field. But even worse, it's like more like the John Carter movie, where this went through a lot of people.
A lot of people.
thought it was a good idea. I think it's okay to share stuff that doesn't fit perfectly in an academic journal when you're talking about concrete field work. And when you see guys, one example that we've seen in our career is rebound of shotcrete
Right.
that's applied into tunnels. And when you can stop that from happening, it's real. And it saves people not just time and money, it's a safety thing, and it's massive. And we've seen that in person. And when you go to try and quantify that, and everybody's like, well, I don't know how to quantify it. Well, I do. Look at the ground. There ain't nothing on the ground.
Yeah.
And look at your guys. They're clean. Oh, and by the way, you didn't bring 10 pallets of bags down here. You brought 8 pallets of bags down here to break and spray into this tunnel. So, there's not always like the perfect equation. I'm sorry to tell you that. But intelligent concrete, we're big fans. And I really want to take just 1 second. You had our bet that we were making, the $1 about the carbon neutrality fading away. I'm going to give you an opportunity to really put a time frame on that measurable goal of failure. But although, like, in our hearts, the 3 guys hosting this podcast, we're actually on the same side as you on this bet.
Right.
But just to play devil's advocate, we'll still take your dollar on the other side, because I'm not sure that logically we see it failing as fast as I think you mentioned earlier. And really quickly, just 3 reasons why. One is that the major cement plants, even in the United States, have already started converting their production to including cements, or not including cements, 100% of cements that have what they're claiming is a lower carbon footprint. That's number one.
Oh, the 1Ls?
Yeah. So
I have a theory on that one too.
Well, no, we're open to all these theories. So just real quick, 3 reasons why the failure or demise of the carbon neutral movement is either going to take a long time to die or is not going to at all. And so number 1, the cement plants converting what they're making. Number 2, the carbon credit system that exists in the European Union. I don't think we have that here yet, but I mean, to anybody with just looking at it common sense, it looks like a scam, but it still exists. So number 3 is the ESG movement with the big banks. And look, we could go another hour talking about our feelings on the environmental, social governance and how that's being tied back to the banking system and what we really think about that. But regardless of what we think about that, it's there. And if these big multinationals that are vertically integrated and have done these 3 things, converted their cement plants, the banks are pressuring them, and something called carbon credits exists, it's going to be really difficult to derail that movement that is being supported by those pillars that have nothing to do with our business.
1.5 years. Right? So what's 1.5 years from now?
Let's call it the beginning of 2024. So spring ACI 2024.
Spring ACI 2024. I think that's great. I don't think, if you hear anything, whatever this movement, what is the movement called? I think it's called through ACI, the Carbon Neutral Movement.
Yep. Yeah, so you're looking at, we'll give you April 24.
Okay, April 24, that it will turn into less than 5%. And that means that it'll exist either by another name. And yes, I do believe that we change the names of things so we can change up goals and objectives. Climate change, global warming.
No one's better at that than the current administration. Come on.
Oh, I knew. I was waiting on it to say it. I was waiting on it.
The reason why, and okay, so measurable. So I think it won't exist in at least 20% of its form. That's what I think where we can start considering that it has success.
I think that's a fair baseline, 20%. I think that may even be aggressive on you. So you're, in that case, you're really winning it at that point. I mean, really.
I can change it up a little bit more. I don't mind being a little forgiving because I'm very confident that our industry has such a short attention span with a large exodus of people leaving. And brother, we've been through this cement shortage. Now, y'all have a little bit more hair than me, but you know, I started a few years before y'all, and in 1996 to 1998, we had a huge cement shortage. It was called the Great Cement Shortage. And where did we go to get cement? We didn't go to freaking Idaho. We didn't start building more plants. We went to Asia. And we started getting these cements with a higher blane fineness, a higher alkali content. We started getting 28-day strengths in 24 hours.
In our last podcast, that's actually what, that to you, that was the inflection point of where the concrete industry maybe went a little wrong, was that cement shortage led us to having a type of cement, the characteristics that we just never recovered from.
Dick Burrows, before he passed away, God bless his soul, was trying to fight for a type 6 cement. One of the strongest voices for us to go back to the way it used to be, 28 days to get 28 days strength. Unfortunately, he died without that ever happening. And our industry won't do it. And you know, our industry is already starting to push back. I can tell you that at a number of ports, there are warehouses that are being rehabbed, and they're starting to import cements from India. They're buying in 20-foot containers, and they're schlepping out to freaking ports all over the U.S., whether it's in Houston, New Jersey, or California. You know, the industry wants its freaking sugar and ain't going to take aspartame. It's going to pay money, and it's going to kill the environment to do it. That's why you need Rich Saishi on the phone or on this call. He will tell you the industry is not buying sustainability. I don't care what major conglomerates. Where the eyes go, the money follows, and people are buying, get me off the job site as quickly as possible and give me a concrete that allows me to do the same job with less qualified people or less people. That's what they're buying.
Amen, brother. I think we're going to have to leave this thing. It's
a great place to end.
Well said, brother.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate the day and the time.
Thanks, John. It's always a pleasure, man.
Awesome. Thanks, John.
Talk to you. Bye.
All right, and that's going to do it. As always, big thank you to Dr. Belkowitz for coming on the program and enlightening us, and hopefully you as well. Hopefully you enjoyed the program as much as we enjoyed bringing it to you. Be sure to give us a follow and a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts, and also check us out on social media. That's YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, wherever you get your social media. And be on the lookout for new episodes coming at you here shortly. We'll try to get back on a regular schedule with putting out at least 1 or 2 episodes monthly. Big thanks to Acti-Gel 208 for being the presenting sponsor of today's episode of the Add 10 Gallons Concrete podcast. And until next time, y'all be good.